of the heart flows the issues of life. And many of these issues stem from one's emotional, mental, and spiritual condition. Such issues may oppress, stifle, and even stagnate one from living a healthy and fulfilling life. So how does one progress past such issues and achieve a state of emotional, mental, and spiritual healing? There's help, so open your heart and prepare your mind. It's time for healing to take place in your life. You're in tuned to Talking with Dr. Toy, a holistic approach to emotional healing. And now, your host, licensed professional counselor, Dr. Toy Lisa Mitchell.
It's just me and you. I feel so lost, 'cause I don't know what to do.
Well, good Sunday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to Talking with Dr. Toy. Comes your way every Sunday. Listen, I again want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to just hang out with me. I am so grateful for that. And so, as a matter of fact, for those of you who may be new to the podcast, let me let you know that my purpose is to provide a holistic approach to emotional healing. Therefore, my mission to provide a holistic and restorative therapeutic approach in addressing and resolving issues that adversely affect the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being of individuals who desire to enhance their quality of life. I want to do a self-care check. How are you? You know, this is a part of our process that as we are navigating this world and we're navigating aspects of our lived experiences, hey, it is definitely beneficial to what we say, integrate a sacred pause in your life and really kind of slow down just a tad to check in. And one of the checks that I would love for you to definitely implement into your life is a self-care check. How are you? And what did you do and what are you doing for self-care? I've been talking to individuals, and anxiety is definitely on the menu, right? Because there's so many things that are happening in our world, in our lives, and in the lives of those around us, that it can really be stressful. It can really be stressful. It can really be anxiety inducing. And so part of this process that I've been really mentioning to individuals is to really check in with how are you doing? And what are you doing for self-care? What are you doing to help regulate this anxiety? What are you doing to help decrease anxiety? And so one of the questions I've been asking individuals is this: what are you in control of? I want to pause right there. All right. Because there are things in our lives that we know that we just don't have control over. There's some things that are happening in this world. And part of this process is that if you're in tune to anything, you know, there's a lot going on that can be stressful. And so part of this process may be focusing in on and zoning in on, okay, what can I manage, right? What can I control that's going to help me, that's going to improve my overall function, and that's going to help me reduce stress and to regulate the anxiety? What is something that I do have control over, that I can manage? And some of that is your time. Now, I know when we're taking care of other individuals and we work and all of that, maybe our control may be a bit limited. However, there's still some aspects of our time that we can manage, right? And so, although I cannot manage all the happenings that's taking place in this world, I can manage part of my life where I can implement a pause, right? Where I can say, you know what, for 5 minutes out of the day, that's going to be for me. Now listen, does it take longer than 5 minutes? Yes, but hey, start somewhere and we can start there. So that's something that I can control. I can maybe control 5 or 10 minutes of my life a day. where I am vigilant and very intentional about engaging in that self-care, that holistic self-care. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to make sure that you're creating that space where you can check in. And you know our 3 A's that we talked about, right? Awareness, attuning, turning towards it, not avoiding it, and then attending, really identifying what is needed. That is a part of that self-care check, right? And so that is a part that you can manage. And so sometimes what can help really regulate anxiety and even reduce stress is pivoting to say, okay, there's some things that I can't control. There's some things happening, maybe in my family, in my community, right, that I can't control. So let me hone in on what is manageable for me, right? What can I do that's going to help improve my overall health? So that is something that I would love for you to process and think about, right? As you are tending to aspects of self. And then, of course, that balanced perspective of community care, the power of collective caring, people committed to leveraging their privilege to be there for one another in various ways. And how I frame this, how did you show up for others and how did you allow others to show up for you? That too is very powerful, where we avail ourselves to others, because sometimes that can be empowering within itself. That although there's some things happening that are out of my control, maybe what I can do is be there for someone else that may be experiencing struggles, someone else. And listen, sometimes that may not mean, and I want to really emphasize this, doesn't always have to mean that it has to be tangible, something material, right? It can just be a phone call. It can just be a text to say, listen, just thinking about you. How are you doing? So sometimes that aspect of showing up for others just may be being present, right? And that in some ways can be empowering, because although we can't control all aspects of what's happening, there are some things that we can do. And so focusing on some of those things that we can do, that can really help you navigate all that is happening. So how did you show up for others, right? In very small ways. Doesn't have to be materialistic. That can help. And also to remember this aspect of balance. How did you allow others to show up for you? Because it is a part of giving, yes, but also too, there is, I would say, benefits. Let's say that benefits for receiving, allowing others to be there for us. I was talking to someone and we talked about this aspect of not wanting to be a burden on people, right? Not wanting to be a burden. So sometimes what we do is that we shoulder a lot on ourselves because we're like, we don't want to be a burden. And, some of that can come from this aspect of feeling like you're bothering, people, right? Because maybe some things in childhood where you felt like you weren't, you didn't have safety to really ask for what you needed. And maybe you also struggled with getting needs met in childhood. And so basically one of the things that you've kind of learned is this aspect of self-preservation, that I can only depend on me, myself, and I. And so that helps us to really, not experience, so we think, disappointment, discouragement. And so we become in some ways, put on our superhero cape. And we try to do all things ourselves. And when others want to show up for us, and when others want to lend some assistance, nope, I got it, right? And some of what that may lend to is that you may think that you are a burden when there are people in your life that really want to bless you. They want to help you. And here's the thing, that God may have placed in your path to help you. And basically what you're doing is you're showing off the blessings of God, because it may stem from some other deeper issues that you don't want to appear vulnerable to allow people to show up for you, because you may see that as a weakness, or you're deficient in some way. And I really do think that that type of reasoning, I do think that can be a part of what the enemy is seeking to do, to keep you isolated, to keep you disconnected, because there is power. When we talk about when 2 or 3 come together, there is power. A 3-strand cord is not easily broken. And if the enemy can just isolate you and let you really stew in and believe that no one wants to show up for you, you don't want to be a burden on anyone else, then what does that do? That keeps you in some ways in survival mode. And we've already talked about that when we're in survival mode, it's difficult for us to really hear clearly, to some degree, the prodding of the Holy Spirit, the voice of God, because we're always elevated. We're in survival mode. And so sometimes to keep us from being in tune, that can keep this aspect of survival mode stirring up in our lives. So we're going from one thing to the next, one thing to the next, and we don't have a space to really hear and meditate on what God may be saying and what God may be doing and what God may be showing us and who God may be placing in our path. I love this terminology of destiny helpers. How God may have destiny helpers lined up to help you, but because we're in this space of self-preservation, in all of this that may be due to some past aspects of trauma, we may miss those blessings. Why is this important? Well, this comes alongside of what we've been talking about for the past 2 podcasts, where we've been talking about this concept of impression management, right? Now, natural for us to do, but sometimes what can fuel that impression management are our issues of how we want people to perceive us, or how we want to be perceived by others, right? And our concern with how others perceive us. I want people to perceive me as the strong one, the one that don't never let them see you sweat. I want people to perceive me that way, because then what that tells them is that I am strong and you cannot hurt me. Right? So we navigate life in this impression management mode. And sometimes what that does, as we talked about last time, sometimes what that does is that we end up investing more in impression management than living an authentic life. Because we are so busy trying to win over, whether the affirmation, the validation, and the approval of others, that sometimes those aspects, those core anchored values that we may have, sometimes those are negated because we're running after, right? Pursuing how we want to be perceived by other people. And sometimes that can really disconnect us from our authentic selves. And so we've been talking about that for the past 2 weeks. And so one of the things that I want to address today, and then I did ask you, remember, I did ask you to really pause and really think how, because we all engage in impression management. Like I said before, this is not about judging, but I did ask you to really pause and think about why. What's the why, right? Why are you engaging in this? Why, right? And how does that show up? How does that show up in your life? right? And we talked about in some ways how shame can fuel some of this. Embarrassment can fuel some of this. This aspect of perfectionism can fuel some of this too. That we feel like if we don't live up to that, then there's a void in our identity, right? Because in some ways our identity may become conflated with this aspect of impression management. I can't be something else when I'm already have put forth this image. Being something different will mean that my identity has been compromised, right? Being something different when maybe your identity is conflated with what you're with this impression management, right? And so you may not really have tapped into aspects of your authentic identity because it's been masked by impression management, the impression that you want people to have of you. So this may be a wonderful time to really kind of stop us in our tracks and think about the how and think about the why. Now, here's the other thing that I want you to really think about. How do we navigate this, right? We know that this is a natural part of what we do. So how do we navigate this so that we are not solely investing on maintaining an image and we're divesting and really living an authentic life? I guess what I'm trying to say is this. What does balance look like? All right. What does balance look like? And so I love that book, definitely an older book by Rick Warren, where he talked about the purpose-driven life, right? A very powerful book that I think if you've not read it, I think it would be helpful for you to read. This may be something that would be helpful for you to read at the beginning of the year. Because talking about purpose-driven living with a sense of purpose can really have a profound impact for how we live and how we navigate this world. Now listen, I want you to think about this, that purpose-driven living, I do believe that is part of the answer of ways to kind of anchor back into living a life, not solely just investing in your image. Now listen, part of this process is too, when we talk about a purpose-driven living, part of this is really pausing to connect with your true and authentic values, right? If your values are relationships and your values are peace, right? Then part of this process for you may be pausing and really becoming curious and doing some self-reflection about what is my purpose for being here. And you know what I always say, our purpose is not just to do, our purpose is also being, right? The person that I want to be. And so all of this really helps us to really hone in on this aspect of not just investing in an image, but investing in living a life. So pausing to say, okay, there is a purpose for me being here, right? And I want to say this emphatically. Because I know some people may experience this. They may experience this thing that they are a mistake, right? That they're just here by happenstance, that their presence doesn't matter. That's why I really honor birthdays. I really do. I honor birthdays because it's like it's the day that God brought you into this world. And I love that frame by Fred Hammond, purposed by design, that God designed you and knitted you in your mother's womb and brought you into this world. It wasn't it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't just happenstance. You were purposed by design. And so that's why birthdays are so important. Yes, the gifts are nice, but just to acknowledge that this is the day that you entered into the world. Yes, I love it. And so really being able to anchor in that aspect that I have purpose, that I am here by purpose, not mistake. You're not a mistake. And let me say this, for those individuals who have, made you feel like a mistake, who may have even said it, they do not have the final word in your life. Because in spite of what their words say that you are a mistake, you're here. And God made sure that you are here. That was a God thing. You're not a mistake. And because you are here, you have purpose for being here. You know, I was reading and I love this aspect where it talks about how purpose-driven living can help improve our mental wellness. Research says that individuals who have a clear sense of purpose are less likely to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression, right? I love this. It says this, a purpose-driven life gives us direction and helps us navigate challenges with resilience and focus. Love this statement. It gives us, with a reason to get out of bed in the morning, we are better equipped to handle the ups and downs of daily life. So purpose-driven living is healthy for our overall mental well-being. Now, let me pause. Let me put a pause in this and let me say this, because this is where some of us may get in trouble. And I was talking to someone about this earlier this week. Sometimes what we do is this. We compare our gifts and our talents with those of others, right? And so instead of us really taking the time to really engage in some reflection and pausing, what begins to happen is that we look at other people, and we see what other people are doing, and it may be high profile. It may seem like, ooh, that's meaningful and that's valuable because they're doing this and that, right? So then we get into this aspect of comparing and contrasting. Well, they're doing some great things, and because I'm not doing those things, then my purpose doesn't mean anything. That my purpose is, we begin to think about that their purpose is greater than mine. And so then we begin to, in some ways, not really invest in our own purpose-driven living. But again, we begin to look at others and sometimes want to model or emulate that, because that looks better than my little old, my little sphere of influence right here. They're influencing thousands of people. They're doing this. And so we begin to place a value on what someone else is doing. And then we may minimize our own because it doesn't look like that. So I want you to really kind of pause and think about too. When we think about purpose, remember that statement, you're a purpose by design. Your design is different than someone else's. I love what they say, that no fingerprint is the same. So your design, your purpose by design, and that's different from what someone else is doing. However, I think we need to work on this aspect of how we place value on what someone else is doing versus what we're doing. It's not about the value that we place on it. It's about, hey, this is what I'm designed to be and do. And as long as I am in tune and adhering to the voice of God, that anchors me and that gives me meaning. But being mindful that is going to be different than what someone else is doing. And just because it may be, and this is just an example, just because it may be more out front, that someone may be more out front and getting the accolades and all of this, doesn't mean that their purpose is any greater than yours. Doesn't mean that it's better than yours, or that yours is worse than theirs. I think that's what happens when we get into these value judgments. I think that's what deters us from really, to some degree, living a purpose-driven life. Because let's go back to impression management, right? That if we may not think that it's getting the accolades, right? That this is important enough for people to say, oh, wow, you're doing this. For us to get the validation and affirmation from others, if we don't believe that it's giving us that benefit, then what we may do is that we may abandon that or allow the opinions and the perspectives of others to drive us towards a purpose that we weren't designed to do. And so we may find ourselves in places where you may wake up one day and say, why am I doing this? I don't even like doing this. So be mindful that when we talk about purpose-driven life, what's informing that for you? What's informing aspects of what you're here to do? It's great to pause and think about, why am I here? But I also want to encourage you to really pause and think about what's informing that for you, right? How are you defining purpose? How are you defining that? Because when we think about even the life of Jesus Christ, when he came to seek and save the lost, there were those who were like, well, he's coming to topple the Roman Empire. He's going to be the king. So they had a perception, right? They had a perception about who this Savior would be. And when Jesus did not live up to their expectations and their perceptions, some were disappointed, right? And some were downright angry because Jesus did not live up to who they had envisioned a king would look like. This Jesus is eating with sinners and publicans. He's eating with them. So they're looking like, who is this person? And because they had their own notions of what he would be and look like, they missed him. They missed the purpose of his life. And they missed, to some degree, the blessings that he provided. They missed it. And so this is what you may want to process and think about. Yes, we're purposed by design, but also what's and who is informing that purpose for you. Here's the way that I process and think about it. The one who created you is the voice that informs what your purpose should be. The one who created you. Yes, we can get input from others. Not saying that. We can get input from others, most definitely. However, if we do not receive input from the one who created us, then will you be like others who missed it? Who missed Jesus because he didn't fit their perceptions, their image of who he should have been. And what if Jesus would have said, oh, they're not receiving me as this. Oh, maybe I need to change some things. I need to shift and do some things differently and all of this. Where would we be if Jesus' life was dictated by the images that people had of him? No, that's why we find in scripture where Jesus continually say, I must meet with my Father. and receive that divine affirmation. This is my son whom I am well pleased. Yes. Once you get that affirmation from the one who created you, this is my beloved son who I am well pleased. That is gold. That is treasure. But just because we get that divine affirmation doesn't mean that the enemy won't still play. He'll still play. If you be the Son of God. What? If you be, God just said he was. So the enemy is going to cast doubt. But one of the things that's going to be helpful is staying anchored and connected. That takes intentionality and reflection. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, right? So as we talk about this purpose-driven living, it's essential. It improves aspect of our mental well-being, our mental wellness. However, it also causes us to really think about, when you think about purpose, who's informing that for you? Society? Family? Your partner? You? Who's informing that for you? Think about it. Because one of the things that we don't want to do, we don't want to miss it. We don't want to miss it. Because in missing that, I think we miss out on life. Living a life that's authentic. Well, listen, that's all I have time for today. Remember what I always say. Relentlessly and intentionally pursue authentic and genuine relationships vertically with God, horizontally with others, and inwardly with yourself. Maintain and sustain a keen sense of awareness and ongoing discovery about self as well as others. Take good care of you and engage in things that are helpful for your mind, body, soul, and spirit. And remember, out of the heart flows the issues of life. Let's continue to talk about it and continue our journey towards emotional healing. Until next time, bye-bye.
So I need to talk.
You've been in tuned to Talking with Dr. Toy, providing a holistic approach to emotional healing with your host, licensed professional counselor, Dr. Toy Lisa Mitchell. Please connect with me at talkingwithdrtoy.com or Facebook at Talking with Dr. Toy or email talkingwithdrtoy@gmail.com. I would love to hear your story and hear your heart regarding the issues of life you may be experiencing. Remember, out of the heart flows the issues of life. Let's continue to talk about it. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening, and please join me next week for Talking with Dr. Toy.